Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the BBSim and Scalability Brigade call for May 21st. We have only one item on the agenda that regards flow processing and the issues that we are seeing in the connection between Volta, OF agent, and ONOS, because I think this is the next bottleneck that we will all really need to tackle. Before jumping into there, I know that Serkent is putting a lot of work in adding support to deploy multiple Volta stack on a single cluster. So is there anything on that side that we need to discuss? Oh, okay, Serkent is not on the line, so I take that as a no. Okay, I sent out yesterday.
Sorry, it's a little late. The mute button. My understanding of the work, my understanding of the work he's doing, and I'm supportive of this, but I want to make sure it's visible. Is he's exposing configuration to the libgo via environmental variable for the etcd prefix, because that's where a lot of the etcd work happens in. And so by using an environmental variable for configuration, it allows it to makes so that each executable doesn't have to have a command line argument. So you can just set it via the environment variable in the Helm template. I just want to make that visible because that's a little different than some of our configuration. But again, I'm supportive of it. I just want to make sure people are aware.
Okay, thanks, David. Is there any question about that? Okay, I'll take that as a no. In the last few days, as you may have noticed, we have removed all the scale jobs from our cluster in order to chase down these issues. And I tried to summarize here the errors that we're always seeing when doing runs with 512 ONUs. Now, the setup to do these runs is that we used 3 nodes on the TCD cluster, 3 nodes on the Kafka cluster, 3 nodes in ONOS, and 3 nodes in Atomics. So these resources should be definitely enough to support the amount of work that we should do, but apparently somewhere something is going wrong, because we see a bunch of errors, and mostly we see a different set of errors basically every time we run it. So it's pretty hard to debug what's happening. I reported here the errors that I thought to be the most important. What seems to be the key is this issue in OF agent that in some cases reports a wrong length for a message, and that actually cause the connection to be dropped from ONOS. So this absolutely needs to be addressed, but it's not the only case in which we have seen the connection being dropped, because if the switch doesn't respond to ONOS within a certain time, that is 30 seconds, then ONOS drops the connection and waits for the switch to reconnect again. And we have seen that happening when we request the port description for a big number of ports. But I would like to discuss these issues that we're seeing one by one and see if there is a fix in progress. What is the estimate date for that fix to be ready to be tried? And if not, make a plan to address that issue. So the first thing that we see in the logs every time is that we have a bunch of warn messages for not enough logical ports when we try to calculate the routes. Basically, this message here. And the thing that I find confusing is if we don't have ports on the switch, which kind of route are we trying to compute?
Okay, so Matteo, this error and the next error, this is due to the fact that in the core currently we send a notification to owners that we discovered a port. That port, it's a uniport or an NNI port. And once we send that notification to owners, after that, we try to build the route for that port. So if we're building the route, during that building of the route, we need to have the device information. So if there is a heavy set of transaction on that device, means by the time we acquire the lock to build that route, we already get the flow coming from owners, and you will see those kind of error messages. So it's one thing that I'm working on in the core to change that order, to make sure that whenever we send something to owners, everything is ready to accept a flow in the core. So that will apply for that, the first one and the second one.
Okay, thanks. So basically, this is a concurrency issue.
Yeah.
Because just try to summarize for my own good. We send the port up notification to ONUS, and then in parallel we try to compute the route, and ONUS sends the flows down. So there is a race to lock the device in a TCD, and only one of the two things will happen.
Yeah, and it's not even we don't do it in parallel. We do it sequentially. So it's that causes an issue there.
Yeah, we do it sequentially because only one of the two operation will acquire the thread, the lock on the.
So what happens currently? So if this fails, owner sends the flow again, or we throw this error and process the flow later. Or...
Yeah. So basically, like owners will send the flow again, and there are several conditions that can happen there. And there's another issue that I found in the flow module, in the sense of I don't know if it's a new change or it was there before. If we are trying to add the flow, and then we are trying to decompose that flow after, so basically we add that flow, and then if we're trying to decompose that flow and there's no route, we just return an error. But that flow is still makes its way in the KV store, such that the next time a flow comes in, it would say, oh, this flow already existed and there's nothing with it. So that's an issue that I'm seeing. I don't know if it's happened only in my local environment, or it's something that can happen also in your environment as well. But I believe it may happen. So it's one thing, another thing to fix as well.
Okay, so what happens is that if the flows makes it, so if the flows arrive before the routes, then the flow is stored in a TCD.
Yeah.
And Volta think is done with that flow, and so that flow will never get processed even if ONUS sends it down again.
Exactly.
Yeah, thanks, Ken.
Ken, a question to you. This is Mahir. I had a task goal 3028 about the second item. So if the things you're doing are covering the item 2, then should I continue with this task or abandon it? I had a patch on the get it that we have to have some decision on it.
Let me take a look. I know what your patch is about. Let me see if it will still need your patch or not.
Okay.
I'll get back to you on that one.
Okay, I'll wait from you.
Thanks.
Okay, so the first 2 points here, we address them, meaning that Ken is looking into them. Then the third thing that happened is that it seems there is another ordering issue for the ports update, because there are a bunch of word messages that says basically unable to update logical port state with an code not found.
Yeah, actually, this is Mahir patch, right, Mahir?
Yes. I missed the order. It's not the second, the third one. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So that one can go in Mahir, except like there's a small change I believe that needs to be done there. Like we already discussed about it.
Okay. Again, Ken, if you check the patch, because you had some comments and I had some additional comments on it, so we have to decide something on that and then commit it if necessary.
Okay.
Okay.
Then I'll check your latest comments then.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, the third one, I think it's really surprising, but we started looking at this error failed adding flows to DB, and it seems like that happened because the connection between the core and the TCD drops as the TCD gets killed out of memory. I don't think we have a fix in progress for that. The good news is that there is a patch that Shrey made this morning to collect ATCD metrics, and we are exporting that from Prometheus. It needs a little refinement, but it will give us a view of what's happening in ATCD. How many times are we reading, writing keys, and that kind of information that can be helpful in tracking down this issue.
For the HCD, there are 2 different things that could happen there. One, it could be that we have a bunch of watch or context in place that is not being cleared correctly in the code, or lately we make a change in flows, and where we add the individual flows to the database. In a way, we have much more keys now than before. I doubt that will cause this problem, but I think it's something worth to look at. If this is causing that, or as part of that change, there are some resources that we're not releasing properly with etcd.
And also there were some parameters that we talked on before, which was increasing the memory of the etcd and also disk usage of the etcd. I mean, did you make this change, Matteo? I don't remember the name of the parameters, but there were 2 parameters ranging the size of the memory of the etcd and disk size also. And another issue for this, maybe, sorry, I'm checking the parameter on the other hand.
Yeah, so I haven't done anything because I checked the in our cluster.
Values are, I think, 128K or MK for etcd as I remember. So we talked on this issue before. I don't remember where, but there are some problems with default values. So we have to add this parameter to etcd to increase the memory that the etcd is used.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think we haven't run the system long enough for a memory leak to cause an out of memory, to be honest. I think it's probably just that the defaults are probably too small and we need to revisit that.
I see that by default, the TCD cluster, the way we are deploying as a memory limit of 1 gigabyte. While I assume that the default was without any limit like any other chart. So I'll double check this and I'll try to make some runs allocating more memory to a TCD.
And we also had problems with disk size, I think, as I remember. So there were a parameter with limiting the disk size of the etcd. So there was a parameter to arrange this also. And another parameter is to arrange the number of revisions kept by the etcd, because as I know, etcd keeps the revision information, I mean, different copies of the data as it's changed. So if this revision count is big, then etcd keeps a lot of, many numbers of the same data in different revisions. So we have to arrange this parameter also.
Okay, I'll take a look.
Okay, if I can find these parameters, I will also send you that. Okay.
Thanks, Meir.
And Matteo, when we are capturing the HCD, like CPU memory, we're doing that on all the instances, right? Not only one?
Yeah, that would be all the instances.
Okay. Thanks.
So etcd by itself exports a bunch of metrics to Prometheus. So we're starting looking at this, but for example, you get the total number of keys, and this should be per cluster. Now I don't know why we're not seeing anything. But it also reports, we'll also get details per cluster, for example, sorry, per node, for example, in the CPU, I see the consumption for each node of Kafka, and if I look at them and find the etcd information too. So here is
It'll
one
also
node.
it'll also be interesting to see what are those keys that are consuming the memory. Not just is it a good idea to volume mount the etcd container, and once it crashes, we have the volume to peek into the keys that were present in the HCD.
Yeah, the other option is to add at the end of the pipeline a list of the keys in etcd and dump it to a file. Because if I remember correctly, there is a way to list everything under a prefix using the -- keys only in the etcctl command.
Yeah, if it is in GBs, in GB, and we are adding so much of data into the Jenkins artifacts, it'll unnecessarily consume memory. I was just thinking about dumping this data on the server where you run
Oh, yeah,
you run etcd?
I can do that in the pipeline. I just dump it in a folder somewhere, and they just don't archive it in Jenkins.
Yeah, got it. Thanks. If you're able to pull this data, I mean, any useful data of Prometheus, that's good. But if it's not helpful, maybe dump the keys on the server. That may be useful.
Yeah, so one of the reasons for which we disable the automated job is so that we can run these specific sites and then have the cluster running for as long as we want without any other job coming in. So this is one check that I can also manually do at the end of a run. Stop Volta, stop everything. So even if etcd is in memory killed, should be able to restart it and get whatever it's inside.
By the way, Matteo, like you mentioned that this is 512 ONUs, right?
Yeah.
Did you run it with like a lower number of ONUs and see if you see the same behavior?
So we run it with 200 ONUs, and we see it working. All of these messages, not enough logical ports, route calculation, and port updates for ports that don't exist are still there.
Okay.
But it seems like with 200 ONUs, we don't get in that inconsistent state because all the flows are pushed and accepted. We see it working with 200 ONUs.
Oh, okay. Okay, thanks.
So in OF agent, we see these three errors. This is the first and most concerning one. I honestly don't see why this happens, and mostly I don't see why we don't see this issue with a smaller scale. Because some of these messages are exactly the same whether we run with 1 ONU or 300,000, because they are coded in the OpenFlow agent. The responses are coded there, so it shouldn't change. And so I really don't understand why this is different. But we will need to look at this.
Have you verified that we're not seeing that message on smaller scale? Or are we just not paying attention to it?
Well, I'm not paying a huge amount of attention to it. I can do a run with a smaller scale and double check. But Honors drops the connection to the switch when these kind of messages are sent.
Right, but I'm wondering if the sanity test, we just don't notice the drop, but just things sync back up and work. And it may just be that we're just not noticing it. I don't know.
No, so I mean, so it depends on what scale, right? So if you're trying it with 3 ONUs, I guarantee you this doesn't happen, right? Because in 3 ONUs is what we do, for a nightly regression test. I look at those logs all the time. I can guarantee that it doesn't happen at 3 ONUs. Now the question is, does it happen at 150 or 200 or 250 or 450? I don't know.
But if the message size isn't different based on the number of ONUs, then you back to Matteo's point. It's odd that we don't see it at 3.
Yeah, some of these messages.
So another point to consider there, it's not just that Honors drops the connection, but it's actually the OF agent that, if it's unable to send a message, sends a disconnect. So it's actually both sides, that if they receive a message that they don't understand, they basically kill the OpenFlow connection. So my guess is that we would have noticed with smaller scale, but
One of the requests was this one that was throwing an error, the table stats request. And there is nothing in here that changes with the number of menus. So if we see this error, I can't understand why we see it when running at scale and not when running with few menus.
I wonder if I wonder if something else failed before this, some other request failed, like the port stats request, and this one took the hit. In terms of parsing, so let's say the message that the port stats request was too big, right? And then the parser, for some reason, couldn't parse separate messages anymore correctly. This is all guesswork. I'm just saying. Yeah, go ahead, Andrea.
So I would agree with that. So I think that the table stats request problem that we see, the exception that we see for the missing version here in the table stats is a byproduct of the length of the port stat description that it's too long and we fail to read it. So yes, the table stats issue is, I think, a non-issue. It's a byproduct of a prior one. But the issue of the length of the port description reply, port stat description reply, that is still there. So, and I am certain of that because independent of the flow timeout, I actually managed to disable the disconnection on seeing these two errors. And the error of the length is the first one that arrives. So there is an exception where the port description message is overflowing by some characters. There's exactly an exception. I sent it to somewhere. I have it somewhere. And that, I think, triggers this one. It's not the other way around. The table stats is, to me, a non-issue. The length of the message is, and we need to find out why is that. But I have a suspicion that it might be a leftover of the other issues that Matteo was describing before. So to me, the real root of this whole issue is the stuff that times out on the flows and it doesn't find the ports. Because we have no guarantees of the state of the port description reply message if the ports are not properly populated in the system. We don't know exactly what's in there. And we don't know if we get a partial reply from etcd also. So that is, again, somewhat of my understanding after doing a few runs. I have not pinpointed it. So it's a little bit better educated, but still guesswork.
Can it be helpful to, so if the issue is the length of the port desk message, we should see that same issues without pushing the flows, but only reporting the ports to honest. And that will remove some clutter from the logs.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that trying 512 ONUs with the ports, just the ports, should be interesting to find out. Although I suspect it is not the issue. But.
So 512 ONUs reporting 2,500 uniports. That much was working on its own, right? Without doing flows.
Yeah.
So what are you suggesting? What would help if you do what?
Because when the test was succeeding, we actually didn't check anything in ONUs. So what I'm saying is that this error with the message length may be happening even in that case, just we have never noticed because it happens after we count the ports and we are happy. And and debugging it in that system will remove from the logs all the noise that the flows generate, so it may be easier to find the issue.
Also,
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. Go ahead.
Matteo, question. Did we keep a job this high without flows? Meaning, do we have two running jobs, a 512 without the flows and a 512 with the flows? Up until now, or did we just do the flows?
As now, we only have the one with the flows, but when we deploy, there is a flag with flows that you can check and uncheck will switch between the two.
What I was saying is, when we switched to testing with flows, did we keep a job without the flows with 512 ONUs?
Oh, yeah.
Did we?
Yeah, but before I removed all the jobs yesterday, we had, for each scale we were testing, we had the job with only the port activation, the job with the flows, and the job with provisioning the subscriber.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah.
So what I'm seeing doing the test with the flows is that the ports are generally reported correctly to ONUS, and then the problems start to happen. Just in the activation case, once the port were reported, we were stopping to check anything else in the system. So it's possible that we can see that same issue without having the flows, and that make it a little bit easier to debug.
So we have a known issue here. Is it correct? I mean, the length of some messages are too high, probably the statistic of the flows, and this has to be fixed in OF agent. So do we have any task for that, or anybody looking to that or not?
I'm not sure I understood what is too high.
So basically, I think what Maher is saying is
that was, sorry, Sauron, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, so I think what you're saying is that there is at least one problem that we are certain of, that the message length is too high when the number of ports are too high, and it's not conformant to the protocol specification. And so that just needs to be fixed regardless of anything else, right?
Oh, yeah.
Perhaps it's the cause of this error. I don't know.
Yep. Yeah, that absolutely needs to be fixed, and that's why I was suggesting to try to see if that happens without the flows or not, because that can help us understanding the source of that issue. Because clearly we don't see it when we run with a smaller number of ONUs.
So my question is, I mean, do we have a task for that certain issue, and anybody dealing with that or not?
So as for the task, yes, we have it. Let me find it. I raised the Jira last Friday. And of course, that is this one. It's described slightly differently, because in theory, by the standard, the message shouldn't be bigger than 64 kilobytes. Well, if we look at one of these messages for the port description, it's way bigger than 64 kilobytes, but it's basically looking at why we get that error. I can improve the description on this task.
So So on this note, while we're here discussing the length of the OpenFlow message, so the fix that was discussed internally, at least at ONF, was using the multi-part message. And this might be a question to Seraph. The issue is that, as far as I know, ONOS does not support it because it has to be serialized and deserialized properly. And I don't think we do it in ONOS. Is that a fair assessment? You know it better than I do.
I'm not following you. Multi-part messages are part of the protocol. ONOS has to support it, right? I mean, it's not just for port statistics, but for a number of other messages, you're supposed to reply it with in possibly multiple messages. So I'm not sure what you mean that ONOS doesn't support it. You mean it doesn't support getting replies in multiple parts? That's not true. It does.
That was my doubt, yes.
I'm pretty sure it does. So it sends out a port statistics request or a flow statistics request, if you wish, right? It does that using a multi-part request message, and it gets back replies, which are also multi-part reply messages. So for the case of flows where we have done, for example, in Trellis, we've done 100,000 flows from a single switch, let's say. It's impossible that those 100,000 flows, stats, messages are coming in a single message, right? They're, of course, coming in multiple parts. And so we are processing it correctly in ONOS for flow statistics. Now, for port statistics, typically from a hardware switch, you have 50 or so ports, right? So you don't normally get those in multiple messages coming back. So I don't know. I had John Hall from Siena look into this recently, but I don't know. It's probably to see if ONOS can handle 5,000 ports coming from a single switch, and my recollection is that yes, it can. But the way he did it was probably creating mock devices with mock ports and seeing if the ONOS core can handle 5,000 ports from a single switch. Now, what he probably didn't do is go through the OpenFlow protocol to report that many ports from a single switch. So it's possible that for port stats, the multi-part may be lacking in ONOS, or rather the handling of multi-part messages may be lacking in ONOS. But I'm confident that for flow stats, it's not, because we've done that before. So I can check, but regardless, if we know that there is a problem where too much data is being sent in one message, we do need to fix that. And so is anyone looking to pick up this OF agent story?
I've been looking a little bit into it, but I'm not very experienced with the libraries we are using, so it may take me a little while to get on top of it.
I can give you a hand there, Matteo. Can work
Okay,
on it.
thank you.
Hi, this is Amit. So also, would it make sense that if we change BBSim so that it creates only one uni per ONU, it could give us an idea if the problem is just the sheer number of ports, or it occurs when it intermingles with the creation of flows.
Yeah,
So I don't know if that's a BBSim issue or a choice that the ONU adapter makes to report every uni that an ONU reports. Because even in real life, right, you'll get ONUs that will report 5 unis, but maybe the way we can think about it is that since no operator right now is looking at multi-uni operation,
yeah,
maybe it's a choice that Volta and the OpenONU adapter can make to only report one uni.
Yeah, so if BBSim reports one uni, right, per ONU, so that is what would be reported via the ONCI. So then I think yeah, we don't have to make change to the ONU adapter.
Yeah,
No, but that's like faking it, right?
No, as in if you have ONTs being deployed, they will have only a single uni, right? So
yes,
it's just to figure out where the problem could be. See, and ultimately the solution needs to be able to support, okay, all the ONTs having 4 unis, but for the moment, right, because we're stuck here, so maybe it could give us some clues as to where the problem could be. Is it because of the flows or just the sheer number of logical ports being handled?
I guess we already have that answer, because when we run with 200 ONUs, meaning 1,000 ports, then we got the flows pushed down in the device. When we scale up the number of ports, we don't. But I agree with Saurav that if we make this change, it should be in the OpenONU adapter, and it was there a while ago. Then the behavior changed a few times, because otherwise we'll claim that we can support. We can now support 500 ONUs on the emulator, and then we try with 500 ONUs from Alpha that reports 5 ports, and things don't work. While if we make that choice in the adapter, regardless of how many ports the physical ONU will report, will have the same behavior as with the emulator.
So normally I would have this discussion with Matt, because Matt was the one who went through several cycles in the OpenONU adapter trying to figure out what we report and do we do liveness checks of the ports and so on. And right now we're at the point where that liveness check was very unreliable with different ONU vendors. So we went back to reporting the other ports as disabled. So those 3 or 4 ports are now just sitting around disabled for every ONU. And so the question is, why even report them?
Yeah, so I have a new image that reports only one port. I haven't made a run with it yet, but I can try and see what happens, and then we can decide whether that is the right solution or not.
Okay, but regardless, I think we should still fix these issues if we know that they are issues in OF agent. I mean,
oh yeah,
we may
totally agree.
Mask the problem by changing how we report ports, but
yeah, this will be basically a workaround, because we are reducing the number of ports, but then when we scale up the number of ONUs, we'll get the same exact issue.
Mm-hmm.
Do we know how often we see this error?
Which one in particular?
The connection issue, the one with the length 0, the first one. Yeah.
I can make a quick count on the same log I was counting the other.
And also, this kind of tells us that when I look at the data there, it's maybe it's only me having a hard time to interpret that message. Maybe when we output things, we need to output in a way that we can understand what the heck it is.
Yeah, so there's actually a JSON output of many of these messages on the debug level, and I've enabled a few of them for my tests. But I agree that makes little sense to. I don't understand that either. So yeah, we could try.
This JSON output is for many or all? Actually, I thought they were for all messages. Everything is in JSON.
Well, yes, it's kind of in JSON, but then the outputting this data in this binary format makes no sense to me. Because, for example, when you report 2000 ports, these strings get basically 3 screens long, and there's absolutely no value in the logs.
And that's what I meant. There is actually a debug level log that serializes the output completely in JSON with the data serialized in JSON. And there I can actually see the whole 2,500 and something ports serialized in JSON. It's a huge message.
Yeah, it's somewhere in here, if I remember correctly, there is that.
No, I can get it for you too.
Yeah, I think. Well,
but
somewhere in the code.
But surely you're doing the scale run in some warning log level, right? Not in debug.
Yeah,
so,
we're not doing. This is the interesting thing. When I tried to do the scale run in debug mode, I wasn't seeing any of these issues.
What? It should be worse, right?
No.
Should be. Instead, it seems like things are going slowly enough that we can handle them.
Because debug is just introducing a lot of latencies. So everything would just go smoothly.
Oh, I see. Okay, I see. Oh boy. Okay. So it completely changes the timings and actually makes things
makes things slower, but working. That is amazing for the bug. Basically, the moment you observe it, you don't see it.
It's the Heisenberg principle.
Yeah.
So what it means, it's for anything that is output as an error, when we're going to output a message that is like cryptic, I think we have to move it into JSON. Even if it's a little bit more time consuming, like CPU time, but I think it makes sense. Otherwise, this message would be totally useless.
Yeah.
Well, we have already encountered an error. So at that point,
Hello? Can you still hear me?
the length of the message.
Yeah, looking briefly at the code, it seems that this is a part of on the failure of a send, but I don't know if it's tried to resend again or not. Try to resend and it's a different things.
No, if there's a failure on the connection, on sending the message, it just kills the connection. It just says OFC disconnect.
Oh, okay.
Lines 4, 5, around 450, around 470. There's an OFC.events channel where an OFC event disconnect gets put into if there is an error in the send of the message.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
so I got disconnected for a little bit. What are you looking at so I can put it on the screen?
No, we were just saying the fact that two things. One, the fact that debug is slowing things down makes at least me think that is not really, that what we're observing is all due to unrelated issue. The length of the message is not a problem. And the other thing, we were looking at the class that is called connection.go under the OpenFlow agent, where the error is thrown, and there just disconnects. I was just pointing in that piece of code.
Oh, okay, thanks. So anyway, we're getting at the top of the hour. I think it was an interesting discussion. We have at least a few things to look at, and we already have people looking at a couple of issues. So I was just checking if there was something else we needed to take care in these last 5 minutes.
We didn't really talk about the last two issues, did we? The flow timeout and can't reach Volta.
So the flow timeout, we kind of talked about it at the beginning when discussing these first two, or at least that was my understanding, that Ken is looking at that. And it is basically a race condition between the route calculation and when the flow arrives from us.
Okay, fair enough, yes.
I think there are some other problems there. It's not totally about the first items.
Yeah, the one for the flow, OF agent, the flow time in Volta, and then the loss that you have there, I think those are a direct impact of the etcd. That's why you're saying that. In fact, the message saying etcd there.
Yeah.
Like enable to write to KV store. So that's.
Yeah, there are some issues with going to KV store and come back on the time. I mean, spending a lot of time into querying the KV store, then there should be some problems more than that we don't have on the screen now. But I exercised on my test that the OLT adapter also gives responses too late to RW core, so we have timeouts also for this issue, for this case. There are a lot of steps on flow addition to affect the duration of the flow addition. So we will exercise them one by one. And KV store is one of them. Open OLT adapter is the second one. And I had a the task for that about the resource generation in OpenOLT. It takes too much time to generating flow IDs, import IDs, decount IDs, etc. So it should be checked also. So this item includes a lot of other items in it, I think. So the log that we are seeing is about KV store, yes, but there are some other issues that we have to address.
Yeah, for sure. One question that I have is like between the core and the OLT adapter or even ONU adapter, when we send the flow down, we respond back to ONOS and then we wait for a response. But just for safety, we put a timeout there in case the adapter goes away. Then so that timeout currently is set for 10 seconds. Like, do we want to increase a timeout to a big value so that like to make sure, because in most cases the OLT actually add those flows, it's just taking a long time to respond. Do we want to change those timeout, or do you even want the call to timeout on the flow add when you send a request to the OLT?
Yeah, this may be a solution until a level. You're doing tests with 1,000 ONUs, and the timeouts here increased to 300 seconds, 400 seconds, etc. So it's too weak. And increasing from 10 seconds to 30 seconds, okay, but increasing from 10 seconds to 500 seconds is not okay, according to me. So it needs to be improved, and some parts of the code needs to be improved, I think.
Oh yeah, definitely. But I'm just wondering, like, if we take the case of 30 seconds, right? So if a core send a request to the OLT, if somehow the OLT takes a little bit longer than 30 seconds to respond, so there would be a timeout, and that flow would be gone from the core. We'll remove it from the core. But what happened is the OLT may still have added that flow. So then the owners will say, oh, you don't have that flow, I'm going to add it again. And then the core will add it again to the OLT. But if OLT takes another 31 seconds, say, then that will time out again. So we'll end up in that situation if we put a low timeout. I agree that we need to fix the issues, like more than 10 seconds, that's a long time. But what kind of timeout do we want to have there? Or if we really want to have a timeout?
But is this really affecting the issue at hand here? Meaning that BBSim should immediately report success on the flow, right?
Yeah, BBSim immediately reports it because it doesn't do anything with the flow.
Exactly. So although it is an issue this time out, I don't believe it's strictly related to what we are discussing here.
It will show up. It's because at this time we're seeing a lot of issues, and they may be hiding a lot of other issues. So, but those we know it's an issue. Like the timeout thing, we have seen it. Like Maher was saying, he has seen it. It is an issue.
Okay, I think we'll just get to that once we are past some of our problems with ports and disconnections with ONOS. I believe, you know, we will hit these issues there. And we can make a call whether we change the timeouts or we improve the speed. We should probably do both, you know, improve the speed at which OpenOLT adapter is processing these flows and sending it down to BBSim or the physical OLT.
Yeah, and I think that is the patch Mayer is working on to split the flows from the physical device will help with that.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, there are two tasks related to this issue now, I think. I mean, not directly this issue, but related to flow timeouts. One is the issue that I'm working on. It will improve some. And the other one, I think, I opened the task about the flow ID generation resource manager in OLT. I think it's also, if we can fix it, it will also affect this timeout.
Okay. Meanwhile, we also have that work going on where we're trying to reduce the number of cloning instances where we're cloning things, right? In the core.
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have a number of things we're waiting on. Okay, that's good. I mean, progress. I mean, in terms of, we have about a month to go till Volta 2.4, a little more than a month. This is quite easily the number one priority, to get to 2 OLTs with 500 ONUs each completely working. So, you know, everything else is really, you know, work on multiple Volta stacks. Yeah, good that someone's looking at it, but not a priority. This is the priority. We have to get past this by 2.4. Oh no, there are other things also going on. But again, this is our number one hump that we have to get over. Thank you all.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon, either on Slack, emails, or any other means.
Yeah, Matteo, just one last thing. I have some changes that I would like to test. Like when I test most of my changes locally, it's always look good because maybe I fudge them locally. Is there a way for me to build my own load and test it in your environment?
Yes, we can talk about this offline, but I can give you permission to run the test.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Just one other quick question. So once you turn debug on, right, and everything completes successfully, how long does that take? Do we have a number there?
I don't have the number. I can do another run and see it, but it takes longer than 10 minutes.
Okay. All right.
Okay, guys. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thanks.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Thank you.